If you've ever sat at a family reunion pretending not to notice the favoritism being rubbed in your face, then hey, pull up a chair. This one's going to hit a nerve. My name's Brandon. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my life, I was the invisible kid in my own house. You know the type. The one who gets told, maybe next year, while watching his golden child brother unwrap yet another shiny new toy he'll break in 2 weeks. The one who teaches himself how to cook because no one's ever home, and who learns the value of $1 while his brother is blowing through dad's credit card like it's Monopoly money. That was me. Quiet, overlooked, and underestimated. My younger brother, Connor, 2 years younger to be exact, was everything I wasn't, according to my parents. Athletic, talented, gifted, charming, has potential, the list goes on. He was the kid with the room full of trophies, the weekend soccer tournaments out of state, the week-long elite sports camps with celebrity coaches. My parents didn't just encourage his dreams. They funded them like a startup. Meanwhile, I was the kid who was good with computers but told to stay realistic when I mentioned starting a business. I wasn't even angry about it for the longest time. It just was what it was. That's the dangerous part of favoritism. It doesn't always come in yelling or screaming. Sometimes it's just silence. Sometimes it's a shrug when you mention your passions, a "we'll talk later" that never comes, or a half-hearted "proud of you" muttered while scrolling through their phone. But here's the twist. I didn't get bitter. I got busy. I started small, building websites in high school, fixing neighbors' laptops, learning SEO, coding, flipping cheap domains. Anything that could stack a few bucks while Connor was off playing varsity and getting cheered on from the bleachers. I'd come home from my part-time job at a hardware store and hear about Connor's game-winning goal or how he might get scouted for some university. Mom would beam with pride. Dad would crack open a celebratory beer. Me? I was expected to keep it down so I didn't distract Connor while he recovered. It wasn't just the attention. It was the resources. They spent nearly 20 grand on his graduation trip alone, some all-inclusive cruise through Europe with his friends, and a GoPro Hero he didn't even use. He came back with tan lines and blurry photos. I got a $50 Amazon gift card and a generic Hallmark card with my name scribbled in. I still remember my mom's exact words. "Well, Brandon, you're so independent. We figured you'd rather do something on your own." Yeah, something like not existing. College, fully paid for him. Dorm, books, car allowance. Me? I had to choose between taking out student loans or skipping college altogether. I chose the latter. Not out of pride, but because I already knew they wouldn't co-sign, and I wasn't about to start my life drowning in debt just to prove a point. I took that time to learn everything I could about digital marketing, real estate, and the parts of the internet people ignore unless it's making them money. Fast forward a few years, and I was managing social media accounts for real estate agents, then small firms, then actual brokerages. I figured out pretty early that the agents were the faces, but the real money? That was in the properties. So I started saving. Every dollar. No fancy car. No takeout. No vacations. I rented the same dingy apartment and drove a rust-colored Corolla until the windows wouldn't roll down. I was 24 when I bought my first duplex. 26 when I owned 4 more. Now, at 28, I've built a tidy little portfolio, multi-million, if we're being technical. Quietly, of course. No bragging, no Instagram posts. Just cold hard progress. None of my family knew. I didn't tell them. I didn't see the point. What were they going to say? That they were proud now? But that brings me to the reunion. Oh boy, the reunion. You ever feel like the universe is setting the stage for something? Like it's pulling the curtain back, placing people exactly where they need to be, just waiting for the moment the lights come on? That's what it felt like walking into my uncle's lake house that day. Picture this, a sunny Saturday, family buzzing around with plates of barbecue and plastic cups full of sangria, Connor's girlfriend twirling her hair in the corner, while people praised him for almost landing a job at a local sports network. My mom kept bragging about his networking skills, while practically feeding him deviled eggs like a toddler. I stood near the back patio, nodding, smiling, sipping a watered-down soda. Nobody asked what I'd been up to. Not once. Not even in passing. That's when my cousin Ava, bless her nosy heart, walked over and said something that started the dominoes. "Hey Brandon, weren't you on some podcast or something?" My friend forwarded me a clip. Something about house hacking and rental income. Connor, who had been flexing his new watch to an uninterested second cousin, turned his head. My mom. She laughed. Laughed. Brandon? On a podcast? Must be a mix-up. He's always doing those online side hustles. I was going to let it go. I really was. But Ava wouldn't drop it. She pulled out her phone, clicked through her Instagram stories, and boom, there I was. A repost from a real estate channel with 500,000 followers. My name in the caption. My face in the thumbnail. Talking about long-term rentals and market trends. Connor's eyebrows rose. Wait, that's really you. Everyone started turning. Eyes shifting. Conversations pausing. My dad squinted like I had just walked out of a magician's hat. Yeah, I said casually. I've been investing in real estate the last few years. Been going well. Connor scoffed. Real estate? Like flipping houses? What do you know about that? I shrugged. Enough to own 7 properties, I guess. And just like that, silence. You could hear the plastic forks hit paper plates. But this was just the beginning. The part where the air thickens and you know something's coming. I saw Connor's jaw twitch. My mom's smile falter. My uncle's eyes sharpen. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I could feel it. That slow burn of all those years bubbling up to the surface. That day didn't end in silence. It ended in a full-blown explosion that tore through every lie we'd ever told ourselves as a family. And it started with 5 words out of Connor's mouth that would unravel everything. You didn't earn any of it. You ever hear someone say something so ridiculous, so completely upside down from reality, that your brain just freezes? Like your system has to reboot because it can't process the sheer audacity? That was me in that moment. Connor's face was red, his voice sharp, just loud enough to turn the patio into a theater. You didn't earn any of it. You just mooched off the family like always. I blinked. Once. Twice. My cup of soda was sweating in my hand. Everyone froze. Mom let out this awkward little chuckle, the kind that sounds like a balloon deflating. Connor, come on. But he wasn't done. Oh no. He had years of entitlement stored up, and I guess my success triggered some kind of emotional avalanche. You think you're some big shot now? He snapped, stepping forward. Because you bought a few houses? Please. You wouldn't have gotten anywhere without this family. You think we didn't support you? Support me? I actually laughed, and it came out more bitter than I meant it to. I looked around the patio at all the familiar faces, my parents, my aunts and uncles, cousins I grew up with. Nobody said a word. Most of them looked away. Some pretended to sip their drinks like they didn't hear anything. I turned back to Connor. Support me? You mean like when you got a $20,000 graduation cruise and I got a $50 gift card? Or when mom and dad fully paid for your college and told me to figure it out myself? Dad's face tightened. That's not fair. You said you didn't want to go to college. Because I couldn't afford it. I said louder now. You said I was too independent for help. But Connor needed a new laptop? Done. His car broke down? You bought him a new one. I walked to work for 6 months in the snow, and you didn't even ask if I needed a ride. Connor scoffed again. You could have asked. I turned to him. Why would I? So I could be reminded again that I don't matter? It was like something inside me finally cracked open. All the quiet years, the silent swallowing of pride, the gritted teeth, the fake smiles at birthdays where my gift was an afterthought. It all started pouring out. You've always had it easy, Connor, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. And instead of appreciating it, you walk around like you deserve it. Like you earned it. But the truth is, you've never had to fight for anything in your life. His eyes narrowed. Oh, so now you're the victim? I shook my head. No, I'm not the victim. I just stopped playing along. And that's when it happened. The betrayal I didn't see coming. Mom stepped between us, arms crossed, that classic tight-lipped look she always gave me when I caused a scene. Brandon, she said sharply, this isn't the time or place. Of course, because heaven forbid Connor's perfect image gets smudged by reality. You're defending him? I asked, stunned. She didn't even hesitate. You're making a spectacle out of a family gathering. Whatever your issues are, we can talk about it privately. I looked at her, really looked at her, and it hit me. There was no misunderstanding. No unspoken miscommunication. She meant it. In her eyes, I was the problem. Not Connor. Not the years of neglect. Not the blatant favoritism. Me. That hurt more than I expected. And then, right on cue, Dad chimed in. We're all proud of what you've done, son. But there's no need to rub it in. Rub it in? I hadn't even mentioned a single dollar amount. I hadn't flexed, hadn't bragged, hadn't pulled up my portfolio or flaunted a car, or even said the word million. All I did was confirm something someone else brought up. And somehow, I was the villain. Connor, meanwhile, stood there smug as ever, arms folded, basking in the glow of being defended. That's when I realized this wasn't a one-time thing. This had been the dynamic forever. I just never had the leverage to see it clearly. You know what? I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. You're right. This isn't the place. Because I'm realizing now, I don't have a place here. My Uncle Mike, Dad's older brother, shifted uncomfortably. He'd always been the more distant one, the observer, never really took sides in anything. But I saw something flicker across his face. Concern, maybe. Recognition. Still, nobody said anything. I walked away from the group and toward the edge of the lake, gripping the railing and staring at the water. My heart was pounding, not from anger, but from something deeper. Disappointment. Grief. That little boy inside me still hoping his parents might one day say, "We're sorry we overlooked you. We're proud of what you've done." That boy died that day. I stayed by the water a while, trying to calm down, pretending the breeze could wash away what I'd just felt. And then I heard footsteps behind me. Connor. Of course. Don't walk away now, he said. You wanted attention, right? You got it. I didn't even look at him. I didn't want attention. I wanted respect. You think owning a few buildings means you're better than me? I think working for everything I have while you were handed the world means I've earned more than you ever will. He bristled. You're still the same insecure loser you've always been. I turned to face him finally. And you're still the same spoiled kid who throws tantrums when he's not the center of the universe. His jaw clenched. At least Mom and Dad love me. There it was. I didn't even flinch. Yeah, I said quietly. They do. You can have them. His face fell just a little at that. I walked back up the lawn to grab my keys, planning to leave quietly. I didn't need this. I'd outgrown it. All of it. And then, just as I reached the porch, I heard the voice that would change everything. Actually, Uncle Mike said, loud and clear, from where he stood by the grill. Brandon earned every bit of what he has. And maybe if any of you paid attention, you'd know why. Everyone turned. Even Connor froze. Uncle Mike stepped forward, wiping his hands on a towel, his expression unreadable. You all treat that boy like he's just lucky, like he stumbled into money. But I've watched him hustle since he was 16. He used to clean out my gutters and fix my broken laptop for next to nothing. You remember that, Brandon? I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. He built my company's first website. For free. Spent weekends fixing my team's systems and never asked for a dime. That kid saved us thousands when we couldn't afford proper IT. And I offered him a job, twice. Both times he said no, because he wanted to build something on his own. The silence was suffocating. Mike turned to my dad. And what did you do? You told him to stop wasting time on the computer and get a real job. Dad opened his mouth, but no words came out. Mike kept going. You all looked down on him while he was building a business from scratch. And now that he's successful, you act like it just dropped into his lap. Connor muttered. That doesn't mean he didn't have help. Mike cut him off. Help? From who? Not from you. Not from your parents. Not from anyone here. You had every door open for you, Connor. And you walked through them like it was owed to you. Brandon? He built his own door. The air was thick now. Nobody moved. Then Mike looked at me. Really looked at me. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You did this yourself. And don't ever let anyone take that from you. I stood there stunned. Connor, though, he couldn't take it. His voice cracked when he shouted. He's manipulating all of you. He's always been fake. He's just trying to make me look bad. No, Mike said, cool as ever. You did that all on your own. And that's when Connor exploded. Red-faced, chest heaving. He stormed up to me and jabbed a finger at my chest. You think you're better than me? You're nothing. You think a couple of buildings makes you successful? You're just a fluke. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just looked him in the eye and said nothing, because what I saw in his face wasn't anger. It was fear. He knew the truth now. I had become everything he pretended to be. And for the first time in his life, nobody was going to save him from the consequences of that. When I drove away from that reunion, I didn't feel triumphant. Not even close. I wasn't proud. I wasn't glowing from the praise. I didn't replay Uncle Mike's speech in my head with a smile on my face. In fact, I barely remembered it. My ears were still ringing with Connor's voice, my mom's face etched behind my eyes like a bad photograph. You're making a spectacle. Like I'd committed some crime by telling the truth. I drove for hours that night. I didn't even know where I was going. Just away. At one point, I ended up in a gas station parking lot 3 towns over, sitting in my car, staring at a half-lit sign advertising microwave burritos. I didn't cry. I wasn't even angry. I just felt numb, completely hollowed out, like someone had knocked the air out of my chest and left me floating. You grow up telling yourself that if you work hard, keep your head down, and push through, it'll pay off. That at some point, your parents will notice. They'll see how far you've come. They'll say, "We were wrong. You made something of yourself." But they didn't. They saw a threat, an inconvenience, a reminder that they'd bet everything on the wrong son. For a while after that, I stopped answering family texts. I didn't go to birthdays, didn't return voicemails. They were mostly from extended relatives anyway, half-hearted messages like, "You okay?" or "You kind of snapped back there." Nobody really wanted to hear the full story. They just wanted me to smooth it over, to be the bigger person again. I'd been that guy my whole life. The one who stayed quiet to keep the peace, who swallowed the insult so the day wouldn't be ruined. But that version of me was gone now. I wasn't in a rush to fill his place either. For a few weeks, I didn't touch my business. My inbox filled up. Client emails went unanswered. Rent checks piled in the property manager's portal, and I barely glanced at them. I didn't go out, didn't respond to friends, didn't open the curtains in my apartment some days. I wasn't depressed exactly. I was just tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The kind you carry in your bones. One night, I was scrolling through my phone on autopilot and came across a photo someone had tagged me in, me and Connor, years ago, at one of his soccer games. I must have been 18. I was holding his water bottle, standing off to the side of the field while he posed with his medal. I looked like a spectator at my own family's life. And it hit me. I'd been living on the sidelines for years. Quietly building, yes, but always hoping for someone to invite me into the center. They never did. So maybe it was time I stopped waiting. The next morning, I shaved, ate a real breakfast, opened the blinds. I pulled my laptop out from under a pile of unopened mail and started working through the backlog. It was like flipping a switch I hadn't touched in weeks. I rebuilt my routines brick by brick: client meetings, property inspections, scheduling repairs, checking tenant portals, tweaking SEO campaigns. Each task pulled me further out of the fog. Then something unexpected happened. I got an email from a real estate investment podcast I'd appeared on 6 months earlier. The host had gotten wind of the viral clip my cousin Ava had posted from the reunion. Apparently, someone had shared the video on TikTok with a caption like, "Real estate investor gets ambushed by jealous family." It had over 2 million views. The host wanted a follow-up interview. I almost said no. I didn't want more attention. But then I realized, this wasn't about attention anymore. It was about ownership, not of property, of my story. The interview went live a week later. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't badmouth my family or spill details. I just talked about what it felt like to grow up underestimated, to build something without support, to realize your worth, quietly, when nobody else sees it. And something strange started happening. Emails. Dozens. Then hundreds. People who had watched the clip or heard the podcast started reaching out. Not fans, fellow strugglers. People like me. One guy said, "My brother got a car at 16. I had to take 2 buses to work. I thought I was alone." Another woman wrote, "My parents never said they were proud of me. I just opened my 3rd salon." Their stories cracked something open in me. I wasn't alone. I never had been. One message stuck with me the most. It was from a guy named Jaden who said, "You helped me stop waiting for their approval." That's when I knew I wasn't just rebuilding a business. I was rebuilding myself. And I wanted more. I started expanding. Quietly, as always, but with sharper purpose. I bought 2 more multifamily units, negotiated a storage facility with a partner I'd met through the podcast, and launched a YouTube channel. Not flashy, just straight-up tips on house hacking, credit building, finding undervalued properties. I didn't try to go viral. I just showed up. But word gets around. And eventually, someone else found out. Connor. I didn't even know until he messaged me out of the blue. No greeting. Just, "Funny how you turned a family meltdown into fame." I stared at it for a minute. I hadn't heard from him since the reunion. I debated not replying. Then I just typed back. Not fame. Just telling the truth. He didn't respond. But I knew that silence wasn't peace. It was a warning. A few weeks later, it started. First, my mom called. Left a voicemail. Voice trembling with just enough guilt to sound sincere. "Brandon, can we talk? Your brother's going through a tough time." He didn't mean what he said. I didn't call back. Then Dad emailed. Short, stiff, Your mother's worried. Don't let this silly misunderstanding blow up the family. Misunderstanding? I deleted it. Then came the kicker. I got a call from a real estate investor I'd worked with before. Said someone had reached out pretending to be me, asking for financials, trying to confirm deals, even requesting bank routing numbers. They flagged it immediately, but the message was clear. Someone was trying to sabotage me. And there were only two people who knew enough to try something like that. One of them being my brother. That was when I realized this wasn't over. It wasn't just about jealousy anymore. It was about control. Connor had lived his whole life believing he was the top dog in the family, that no matter what I did, I'd always be in his shadow. But now, he was in mine, and he couldn't stand it. I started tightening everything. Two-factor authentication on all my accounts. New passwords. Froze my credit. Hired a lawyer friend to help me draft cease and desist letters for anything suspicious. I wasn't panicking. I was preparing. Because the next phase wasn't just about surviving. It was about protecting what I'd built and deciding, once and for all, if I was done playing defense. And as it turns out, someone was about to give me the perfect opportunity. Another family gathering. Only this time, I wasn't the one walking in quietly. And the moment that changed everything, it hadn't even happened yet. The invitation came tucked inside a navy blue envelope, thick cardstock with cursive gold lettering that tried a little too hard to look expensive. Please join us in celebrating the 40th wedding anniversary of Michael and Diane, my parents. It was formal, generic, and so carefully worded that you'd think it was a royal gala instead of what it actually was, a family performance. I read it twice, once for logistics, once for subtext. They wanted me there. Correction, they needed me there. That was new. You don't go from being the family goes to getting gold-embossed invitations unless something's changed. My gut told me it wasn't about reconciliation. No one had apologized. No olive branches, no late night, we messed up calls. Just sudden interest. And after what happened at the reunion, I didn't buy it for a second. I left the envelope on my counter for a week. Then I picked it up, stared at it, and smiled. This was the opportunity one didn't know I'd been waiting for. I wasn't going to show up to make peace. I was going to show up prepared. No more walking in like a question mark, hoping for acknowledgement. This time, I'd enter like a period, clean, final, and impossible to ignore. But before I could play my cards, I needed to know what game they were playing. So I started with Ava, my cousin, the same one who had accidentally kicked off the drama at the last reunion by mentioning my podcast appearance. She'd always been sharp, observant, and more importantly, not afraid to spill tea if you bought her a matcha latte. We met up at a cafe near my place. The second she saw me, she grinned. Brandon, the prodigal son, returns. I laughed. Hardly. Just doing recon. She sipped her drink and leaned in. You want the truth or the family version? Hit me with the real one. She lowered her voice. Your mom's been in damage control mode since the reunion. Apparently, some of the relatives were talking about you, your business, that podcast. Even Uncle Greg asked if you were investing on behalf of the family or just yourself. I blinked. Wait, what? Yeah, your dad got defensive. Said you were doing your own thing. But it's too late. People know now. And let's just say, it's not sitting well with a few folks. Especially Connor. I could feel the familiar tightness behind my eyes. And now they're throwing this anniversary party, Ava continued. And guess who's helping plan it? I didn't even have to guess. Connor, she confirmed. He's been talking it up like it's the social event of the year. Invited some local news guy he met during his internship. I think he's trying to pivot, rebrand himself or something. That tracked. Connor was image-obsessed, always had been. Even when he was a teenager, he'd spend more time doing his hair than studying. If he was involved in this party, it wasn't about celebrating mom and dad's marriage. It was about spotlighting himself. And I had a hunch he didn't want me there muddying up his narrative. Let me guess, I said. They're hoping I'll come, play nice, and clap politely while Connor makes some speech about family legacy. Ava grinned. Bingo. So that's what this was. Not reconciliation. Optics. They wanted to keep the family story intact. The illusion that Connor was the golden child and I was the quiet, supportive older brother in the background, steady, invisible, irrelevant. But that version of me was long gone, and I was done playing along. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one. The first step was timing. I didn't RSVP. I didn't text. I made sure they didn't know whether I was coming. Let them stew. Let Connor lose sleep wondering if I'd show up and ruin his carefully curated performance. Second step, preparation. I spent the next 2 weeks tightening my narrative. Not in a manipulative way, just collecting receipts. I organized a visual portfolio of my properties. Photos, timelines, tenant stories, with permission, and numbers that told the real story. Not to brag, to prove, once and for all, that this wasn't some lucky break or internet stunt. I'd earned every brick. Then I updated my LLC documentation. Made sure everything was clean, airtight, and impressive. I even had a few properties recently refinanced at favorable rates, just in time to mention it, if needed. But my favorite piece? A new acquisition I hadn't told anyone about. A commercial building, small but promising. Mixed use, with 2 retail tenants already signed and a third in negotiations. It was local, close enough that certain family members might recognize the address. Why was that relevant? Because it used to belong to one of Dad's old poker buddies, a guy who once told me, to my face, that real estate's too risky for tech nerds like you. I bought it at a discount from his burned-out son. Poetic. I had every detail prepped, polished, and ready. Still, I wasn't walking and swinging. That wasn't my style. I wasn't there to brag. I was there to reclaim the narrative. But sometimes the universe adds its own flavor. 3 days before the anniversary party, I got a call from Uncle Mike. "You going?" he asked, no hello. "Thinking about it." He sighed. "They're planning something. Just a heads up." "What kind of something?" "I don't know exactly. But Connor's been talking to your dad a lot." Sounded like they're putting together some kind of legacy montage. I froze. What? Photos? Videos? Stories? About the family history. And, surprise, surprise, you're barely in it. I exhaled through my nose. Of course. Erase the parts that don't fit the story. That was the final push I needed. "I'll be there," I said. And this time, I'd be ready. The day of the party arrived humid and gray, like the sky itself wasn't sure whether to play nice. I showed up late, on purpose. The event was at a rented country club ballroom. White linen tables and chandeliers trying to disguise the cheap wine and dollar store centerpieces. Connor saw me before anyone else. His jaw twitched when our eyes met. I gave him a nod, casual, unbothered. He looked like he wanted to punch a wall. Mom and Dad were talking to a group of guests. Mom's smile tightened when she spotted me. Dad didn't even look up. Ava waved me over from across the room. "You're late." "Fashionably," I replied. She handed me a glass of something vaguely citrusy. "They're showing the legacy video soon." I raised an eyebrow. "You watch it?" "Oh, I got a sneak peek. Let's just say it's heavy on Connor's highlight reel. Travel photos, soccer trophies, college acceptance letter, internship footage. The whole 9 yards. And me?" She shrugged. "You're in a couple baby photos. And there's a slide that says, Brandon, pursuing tech projects." "That's it? Pursuing tech projects?" I almost laughed. That's how they summarized a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. Perfect. I took my seat quietly when the lights dimmed. The slideshow started. Music, childhood photos, wedding snapshots, Connor's sports montage, family beach trips. My name was mentioned once. No voiceover. Just a slide with that vague little caption. No mention of my business, my properties, my growth, my years of sacrifice. Just pursuing tech projects. The lights came up. People clapped politely. And then Connor took the mic. "Thanks, everyone," he began, all confidence and teeth. "I just want to say how grateful I am to be part of this amazing family. The values Mom and Dad taught us. Hard work, humility, resilience. They made me who I am." I tilted my head. Hard work? Resilience? He droned on about legacy and vision and passing the torch. It was well rehearsed. A carefully built illusion. And then he said it. "I hope to carry that legacy forward. Maybe even bring the family together for a new project, something long-term. Maybe even investing together." I blinked. There it was. The setup. He wasn't just rebranding. He was positioning himself as the family leader. The future. The one who would guide everyone into new ventures. I watched the room. People were nodding, smiling, eating it up. He ended with, "We all have a role to play. And I'm excited to see how we can build together." The applause was genuine. But I wasn't clapping, because I knew exactly what was coming next. They'd erased me from the past so they could control the future. And that was a mistake. Because I wasn't just in the room anymore. I was at the table. And I had something they weren't prepared for. The moment Connor finished his speech, the room buzzed with polite applause and shallow smiles. He stood there like a king addressing his court, soaking it in. People clinked glasses, nodded along. A few even patted him on the back as he stepped off the stage. I waited. I didn't rush. I didn't stand up right away or demand attention. I just let the silence settle back in. Then I rose. A few heads turned. My uncle Mike caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. Ava raised one eyebrow, intrigued. Connor paused mid-sip of his wine, eyes narrowing. I walked up to the mic. "Hey, everyone," I said, adjusting it calmly. "I promise I won't take long." My voice was steady, my heart calm. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times, but now that it was real, it wasn't anger I felt. It was clarity. "I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Mom and Dad for inviting me," I said, scanning the room. 40 years is no small feat. That kind of longevity deserves recognition. And this party, I gestured around. "It's impressive." Connor smiled stiffly, like he was waiting for the punchline. "But while we're talking about legacy," I continued, "I wanted to clear up a little confusion. During the video, you might have seen a slide that said I was pursuing tech projects. That's not inaccurate, but it's incomplete. People shifted. The energy shifted. So I figured I'd fill in the blanks. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm Brandon. I'm 28. I never went to college. Never got a degree. I wasn't scouted for sports or praised at family dinners. I didn't get a graduation trip, a car, or help with tuition. I was the independent one. I glanced toward my parents. My mom wouldn't meet my eyes. My dad stared blankly at his glass. But I did pursue tech projects. Started building websites at 16. Taught myself SEO. Worked night shifts to save up. At 24, I bought my first rental property. Since then, I've acquired 11 more. Duplexes, triplexes, a few small commercial units. I also recently closed on a mixed-use building downtown that used to belong to one of Dad's friends. That got a reaction. My dad's head snapped up. His lips parted slightly. He knew exactly who I meant. I kept going. All of this was built without family money, without support. While Connor was attending elite soccer camps, I was working weekends fixing laptops. While he was getting his car upgraded, I was biking to job interviews. Connor stood now, arms folded. His smile was gone. "I don't say this to brag," I continued, "but to correct the story. Because stories matter. They shape how we see each other. And for too long, the story in this family has been incomplete." I paused. Let that hang in the air. I've been quiet about it. I thought maybe it didn't matter. That if I worked hard enough, the truth would speak for itself. But tonight, when I saw a whole slideshow that erased me from my own family's history, well, I figured it was time to speak. Then I pulled out my phone. And since Connor mentioned investing together, I said, tapping the screen, I thought it'd be useful to share a few numbers. I turned toward the big screen, where the slideshow had played earlier. I'd anticipated the AV setup. Sent my files to the event organizer earlier that day under the name Anniversary Photos, Last-Minute Editions. With one tap, the screen lit up. Slide 1. A photo of me in front of my first duplex, keys in hand, smile small but real. Slide 2. A timeline of my property acquisitions. Slide 3. Passive income chart. Monthly revenue. Cash flow. Market appreciation. Slide 4. The commercial building, before and after renovation. Slide 5. A quiet little note. Net worth, $4.3 million. Gasps. Whispers. Then silence. And finally, the last slide, a quote. Sometimes the black sheep is just the one who got tired of pretending. I stepped back from the mic. Not another word. I didn't need to say anything else. I walked off the stage and sat back down at my table, completely calm. Not smug. Not vindictive. Just done. Connor? He looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under him. His mouth opened, then closed. He glanced around the room, hoping someone would laugh it off, deflect, save him. No one did. Aunt Michelle leaned into her husband and whispered something. Uncle Greg looked impressed. Even a few of the younger cousins pulled out their phones, probably Googling my name. The spell had broken. I wasn't invisible anymore. And Connor? He wasn't untouchable. The fallout began fast. Later that evening, as the party wrapped up and people filtered out, I caught pieces of whispered conversations. Did you know Brandon had all that going on? I thought Connor was the successful one. No, I heard Brandon's been on podcasts. There was a clip trending last month. Can you imagine working that hard and being written out of the slideshow? My mom tried to talk to me as I packed up to leave. Brandon, why didn't you ever tell us about all this? I looked her in the eye for the first time in a long time. Would you have listened? She opened her mouth, closed it, and said nothing. Dad didn't speak to me at all. Connor, however, wasn't done trying. He followed me to the parking lot. Real mature, Brandon, he hissed. Embarrassing your own family like that. I raised an eyebrow. You mean correcting the record? You hijacked the whole night. Made it about you. No, I said, unlocking my car. You made it about you. I just refused to play along. He stepped forward. You think this makes you better than me? I paused, then turned to him fully. No, I said. I think it makes me free. That shut him up. I drove home with the windows down, the night air cool and clean. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying something. I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. Wasn't aching for an invitation to belong. I belonged to myself now. And here's the funny thing about revenge. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply living a life they can't spin, deny, or explain away. A life where the truth speaks louder than their stories ever could. And I made sure, from that night on, no one would ever write me out of the story again. They wrote me out of the legacy, so I built my own.